Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today, gonna do the Canelo versus Plant, the aftermath. And basically, if you haven't seen my aftermath videos, it's just my opinion on the fight. I give it about a week to see what's said in the public, how other people are viewing it, the writers, the fans, across the board. And then I just talk about the fight itself, and I get into, the fighters and where they go now following this fight and different things like that. Obviously this was a big fight. It really was. You had Canelo and Plant were trying to make history in this fight. They were trying to become only the seventh man in the four-belt era, the last 30 years, to unify all four titles in one weight class. And both made their career highest paydays. Canelo made, I think, upwards of around $40 million. I'm not sure if that includes a pay-per-view. And Caleb Plant made $10 million. Again, I'm not sure if that includes pay-per-view. If he gets any part of that, they should. But it was a big-time fight. It was Canelo trying to prove, again, why he is the pound-for-pound king, to leave no doubt. And Caleb Plant trying to, etch his name in history and really take that major step. Because in terms of experience, he had never been in a ring with anybody like Canelo. But the fight, how it went, it went pretty much the way I expected it to go. I didn't think Caleb Plant hit hard enough to hold Canelo off of him, and I thought Canelo would do what he did with Billy Joe Saunders, get closer, land his power shots, wear down. It was a complete wear down and breakdown of Caleb Plant. That's exactly what happened. And then finally, it was just too many left hooks. Canelo was landing wicked left hooks to the body and to the head, and uppercuts here and there. And it was just a good, solid breakdown of Caleb Plant is what Canelo did. And honestly, it was a masterful performance of how you seriously break a fighter down. And again, Canelo's not immune to losing rounds. That's the thing. People want to criticize him. He's getting, and this happens to every pound-for-pound king. People want to argue. They want to be different. And they want to say, oh, well, because of this little thing or that little thing. I've been going back and forth with some fans on a Facebook group that I follow. And, Canelo gets a lot of shit because of his opponent selection. One guy said he hasn't beaten any Hall of Famers. Well, yeah, he has. And I point out all the Hall of Famers, and they go, oh, all those guys were 36 or older. But here's my argument. To those and to the guys he's fighting now, are these guys not the top fighters in the division, no matter what their age is? And I make the argument, look at Canelo's resume for why he's pound for pound, and just look at it. Look at it since he really became a pound-for-pound threat and really kind of came into his prime. It was the second Triple G fight, which I'm sorry, that fight was close enough to call either way. And Triple G was a Hall of Famer, and Canelo got the decision. And what I read was, well, Triple G was 36, and I'm like, Triple G was a pound-for-pound, was on the top of the pound-for-pound list. He was you could argue he was number 1 through 3 at the time when Canelo got the decision, and he was number 1 at middleweight. So Canelo beat the number 1 guy at middleweight. Even reaching back to Miguel Cotto, guys are like, well, Cotto was too small for the middleweight division. I'm like, but Cotto beat Sergio Martinez. He kicked the shit out of him and knocked him out, and Martinez was the number 1 at 160 pounds. So what? Canelo's beating guys. And then all the way up until now, it's the same thing. He followed up the win over Triple G by beating Danny Jacobs, which was an impressive decision victory. Danny Jacobs was number 3 at middleweight behind him and Triple G, and it was a unification bout. And Danny Jacobs is a 2-division world champion. Very, very solid fighter right there. Very good fighter. And Canelo outboxed him, outclassed him. Then he knocks out Kovalev. And people, again, oh, Kovalev was too old. Okay, I'm not saying Kovalev wasn't past his prime, but arguably, and there really is little argument, Kovalev was number 1 at 175 when Canelo beat him. He was the top dog there. He had regained his title, beating Eliter Alvarez. He had a dogfight that nobody was expecting against Anthony Yard. And really the only advantage that Canelo had was Canelo had him sign on for the fight with only 10 weeks to prepare. But 10 weeks is 2.5 months. So I think the reason why maybe Kovalev maybe he wasn't at 100% for that fight, but it was a very good fight. Kovalev won some rounds. It was pretty damn near even, and Canelo broke him down and stopped him. But Kovalev was number 1 at 175 when they fought. And if you don't think he was number 1, he was number 1 or 2. You know, seriously, he was right there at the top of the division. And then he comes back, he takes on Callum Smith, number 1 at 168 and undefeated. And Smith beat the previous number 1, George Groves. People are saying, well, Callum Smith was a bum. You can call him what you want, but he beat the number 1 guy in the division. And then Avni Yieldrum, that was a mandatory fight that Canelo had to take. You know, so he took the fight, he whipped the guy's ass. I mean, you know, and that's what you're supposed to do against a guy, a pushover like Avni Yieldrum. He whipped his ass, okay? That's what you're supposed to do, and he did it. But then you go Billy Joe Saunders, another 2-division world champion, was undefeated, talented southpaw. People want to say he wasn't a big, you know, he's a bum. Go ahead and call him a bum. He has 3 very credible victories on his resume. He beat Chris Eubank Jr., handed him his first loss. He defeated Andy Lee to capture the WBO middleweight title, and he came in the underdog in that fight, put Andy Lee down a couple times en route to a decision win, and then he absolutely dominated hard-hitting David Lemieux for 12 rounds in Lemieux's home country, mind you. And the only other guy that dominated Lemieux like that in recent memory was Triple G, who broke him down and stopped David Lemieux in 8 rounds. But nobody said shit, you know, nobody's saying shit and knocking Triple G for dominating. But Billy Joe Saunders just did that in 2017. Now, mind you, Billy Joe has been injury prone and had issues with his weight, but he was a top 3 or 4 fighter, and he had a belt. Canelo went after him. He was undefeated, and Canelo knocked him out. Decisively beat him. And then Canelo follows that up with Caleb Plant, who was undefeated, didn't have the resume that some of the other guys did, but was undefeated, came in, and Canelo decisively broke him down and knocked him out. And does he lose some rounds here and there? Yes, he does. Canelo is not perfect, but Canelo is pound for pound because he decisively beats all his opponents, and he's beating the top guys. So I make the argument, you know, why is he getting so much shit from fans saying his resume is flawed? You know, it's the same guys that want to make Manny Pacquiao's resume flawed. And on the flip side, it's the same guys that talk shit about Floyd Mayweather. You know, oh, he cherry-picked opponents. That's not what these guys are doing. People constantly want to tear down the best fighters. There's obviously things on every fighter that you could tear down, pick apart, and totally, you know, use as an excuse for why they win or why they do this, why they do that. You can, okay? You can do that all day. But the point is who is Canelo fighting? He's fighting undefeated top fighters right now. No matter age, no matter experience, because he's getting shit for both. He's not beating guys, he's beating Hall of Famers that are too old, but they're number 1 in their division, or he's beating undefeated guys who aren't that good. You know, oh, none of those guys are Hall of Famers. That's not Canelo's fault that they're not Hall of Famers. They're the top guys right now. And the Hall of Famers that he beat, those are great fighters. And the great Hall of Fame fighters, most of them, fight great late into their career. Mayweather, Pacquiao, Cotto, Kovalev, and Triple G all are, you know, Kovalev now, he comes back. If he were to come back, he'd be right away, 1 win, and people would believe it. He'd be right in the top 5 of light heavyweight. You could throw him right in that mix. But Triple G is 39 and still considered the top middleweight in the world right now. You know, so that's what I'm saying. Canelo gets far too much criticism for how good he is, and he is the pound for pound king, and he shouldn't get that much criticism. It was a great performance, He dominated. Is 168 that deep? No, it isn't. It's not very deep at all. But it's got some young talent on the rise, undefeated talent. And, you know, Canelo cleaned up this division and within a year. And he deserves some credit because he beat 3 undefeated champions to get there. So call those guys what you will, and he dominated every one of them. It's not like any one of those guys were in the mix with him. He doesn't have a lot to pick from either. He's having a hard time landing at the 3rd Triple G fight. Charlo doesn't want anything to do with him unless it's on Charlo's terms. Unless Canelo's working with the PBC. Now all of a sudden, Charlo's really wants to make the fight. You know why? Because his daddy, Al Heyman, is giving him the okay to finally do the fight because Canelo just fought with the PBC. You know, and outside of that, there's David Benavidez, which a lot of people want to see that fight, myself included. But, you know, Canelo, I don't blame him for waiting because it builds the fight up more. And I think David Benavidez, I think that could be a mega fight. And David Benavidez needs to stop having problems with his weight and drug issues and his personal life and really get on a fucking roll of wins to where they cannot deny him a world title shot. So Canelo's playing it smart. He's a pound for pound king. He's doing all the right things. And, you know, people need to stop criticizing him, but they won't. That's just the nature of the beast. That's the nature of being number one. Everybody always wants to knock you off the top and criticize you, overwhelmingly criticize you and pick you apart. So that's it. But Canelo's, he's the man. He really is the man. That was a great performance, and I was very, very happy with it. It was just a great way to show that I'm the pound for pound best right now. The majority thinks that, and he deserves a lot of credit. Now, looking at Caleb Plant after this fight, you know, Caleb Plant, no shame. He made a lot of money. It was a big fight, and you know, he actually won a few rounds. He did. He didn't do that bad. But where does he go from here? Well, I mean, there's a few places he can go. You know, he can take some time off, come back stronger. But Caleb Plant's taking a lot of time off in between fights. If I'm Caleb Plant, I'm coming back by the middle of next year, no later than that. Get your feet wet again. Get back in the fucking mix. Why wait? You know, he fought hard. He did well. Come back. Just come back. And that's at 168 or 175. I'd like to see him come back. I think he should make another run at 168 because, in all honesty, outside of Canelo fighting like Jamal Charlo and Triple G at 168, possibly next year, or David Benavidez, there's nobody else that Canelo needs to fight. So Canelo's likely moving up to 175. In my opinion, I don't see another direction for him. I think he's going to eventually move up to 175. So might as well, Caleb Plant might as well move up there. And that's where a lot of other guys are going to chase Canelo to try to get that big money fight. So why not? Or stay down at 168 and go after a world title again at 168 and try to pick up the pieces. Because Caleb Plant, in my opinion, can be effective with his style. But can he dominate with his style? Can he be the best? That's the big question. We don't know. But now that Caleb Plant's fought Canelo, there's always going to be somebody who wants to fight Caleb Plant because he will bring in money now. Money. He is a money opponent and a money fight and a former champion. And people are going to want to use that name as a stepping stone, you know, and it's going to give him opportunities. It really will. So I think he can shake this off and come back and see where his career goes. And, you know, it was a good, solid performance, and it really, you know, it was a good build-up. It had a really good build-up. You know, that fight at the press conference, all the shit that Caleb Plant talked, it really fed into boxing, and it was good for boxing. And I'm really happy that Plant won a few rounds to prove that he could compete on a certain kind of level. And I'm glad Canelo left no doubt with another dominating performance. And I'm glad Canelo's the undisputed champion because that's what making history is what you want a pound for pound guy to keep doing. And Canelo did that. It was impressive. So that's it. That's the Canelo versus Caleb Plant, the aftermath. I did what's next videos on both those guys. If you guys want to go see in detail who they could be fighting next. You know, again, I think Plant, he could maybe get a top 10 guy with the PBC next, or more likely he's going to fight somebody who's you know, just stay busy, shake off some rust, get a win, easy win. I'm leaning more towards that direction for him. And for Canelo, like I said, you go and listen to some of the names on his what's next, but there's multiple guys. Obviously, he has the pick of the litter, but I think Charlo would be my favorite to land the next Canelo fight, Jermall Charlo. Followed by him, the winner of Triple G and Ryota Murata, who are fighting on December 28th, I think has a good chance of landing the fight. And then after those two, I think it's David Benavidez and Demetrius Andrade have the next best chances of doing it. So there's some guys in the mix, but go listen to why. Go listen to my reasoning on those guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. Again, that's the Canelo versus Plant, the aftermath, and this is True Boxing. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You've been hit with the truth.